Hello, we are in the fourth week of our Oops series. Have you guys enjoyed it so far? Yes, sweet. Have you found it useful? Yeah. Have you found it challenging? Yeah, I have. Have you found it confronting even? Yeah, awesome. To be honest, that's actually quite a good thing because these are some really big life-changing questions that we're asking ourselves here so that we can make better decisions and live a life of fewer regrets. And these questions are especially life-changing if you actually take the time to sit with them and actually think about the answers for and what that means in your own life. So I want to start today with a question. It's not the big life-changing question we'll be looking at later, but I want to start with a question, and here it is. What comes to your mind when you think of the word wisdom? What comes to mind when you think of the word wisdom? To be perfectly honest, I think the reaction that many of us would have would be that it kind of sucks. Wisdom's boring. It's not that interesting, right? Like, it's not an exhilarating experience to make a wise decision. I mean, nobody ever looked at bungee jumping, right? They said, oh yeah, bungee jumping. I'm going to bungee jump off a bridge with a rope tied around my ankles that's made of rubber, and that sounds like a really wise thing to do. No, it sounds like a fun thing to do, sure, but does it sound like a wise thing to do? I don't know, probably not. Wisdom's boring. How can you have any fun if you're constantly thinking, oh, what is the wise thing to do? Maybe you think, wisdom's for old people. Can I say that? Wisdom's for the experienced? Wisdom's for old people. It's not for me. Don't wise people have wrinkles and grey hair and long bushy beards? You know what? I'll tell you what. I'll be reckless while I'm young, because when I'm older, I will naturally be wiser. How about that? Wisdom's for all people. It's not for me. I can't make a wise decision about something until I've actually gone through it and experienced it myself. Maybe that's what you think. Or it could be the wisdom's hard. Totally fair, actually. Wisdom is quite hard. It's much easier to be impulsive and make rash decisions on the fly without actually considering the implications, right? Considering consequences is confronting. Wisdom's hard. Or maybe the fourth reason you don't like wisdom, and this is my absolute favorite, YOLO. Thank goodness that's a trend that died down. YOLO. You only live once. Do I need to say any more? YOLO. Why would I waste the time making wise decisions if I can live in the moment right now? Why would I be wise? Wisdom is boring. See, we live in this culture today where a lot of emphasis is placed on making impulsive decisions, right? Getting that new phone right now, buying that brand new pair of shoes right now, checking on what your old high school mates or your ex-partner's doing on Facebook right now because you're curious, or Googling that little piece of information right now. We've got to have it right now, right now. And it's really cool in some respects because information is so readily available. Like at the drop of a hat, at the click of a finger, you can find out what you want to know. And I think that's awesome. But equally, it has dampened the importance of making wise decisions. And I think it's done this to the point where this idea of wisdom is no longer attractive to us. Why would we be wise if we can be impulsive and get what we want right now? But one thing I can guarantee to you is that if we live a life led by wisdom, then it is absolutely crucial in order to live a life of having fewer regrets. And I really hope today that I can show you why that is the case. And I also want to give you an awesome question that you can ask yourselves to live a life of fewer regrets by living wisely. So let's say a prayer before we dive in. Hey God, today as we explore this idea of wisdom, Lord, making better decisions and having fewer regrets, I pray that you just open our eyes, Lord, open our ears, open our minds, open our hearts to what it is that you have to teach us this morning, Lord, because I know full well from my own experience and the experience of others that if we live a life wisely, then we can live a life that is free of regrets. Please be with us, Lord, in your glorious name. Amen. Now, I've had my fair share of experiences when it comes to wisdom on both sides of the coin. I've made some decisions that I think are pretty wise in my life, and I've definitely made decisions that are not wise at all. And I can think back to one example when I was a kid. I was super into skateboarding when I was a kid. Is anybody here an avid skateboarder? Awesome, cool, couple of hands, wicked. I think that's super cool. So I was about 11 years old, and there was a group of us who were super into skateboarding. And let me tell you, we were dreadful. Like, we were proper awful. We could sort of stand on the board and that was about it, but we thought we owned the streets. Like, we'd cruise around the neighborhood, we'd be looking for little sets of stairs that we could do tricks down. Not that we could do very, very much. Try a kickflip every now and again. We'd find some smooth rails that we could sort of grind along, or smooth curbs or something like that. Or maybe it was a massive hill that we could just bomb down. Just go as fast as we can and go down it. And there was this one hill in particular that was just around the corner from my house. And this thing was steep. Like, I'm talking proper steep. Not that we wanted to admit it, because, we're kids and we're invincible. And we're not scared. Like, we're not scared of going down this hill, obviously. Right? But it was steep. Like, if you were riding a bike up this hill, you'd get off it and you'd push. We're talking, like, proper steep. You literally couldn't ride a bike up this thing. And it came up one day as a point of discussion. How cool would it be if you could be the person to ride down that hill on your skateboard and survive to tell the tale? How cool would that be? Like, nobody's actually ever done this thing before. You would be the first person in history that we knew of to have done this. That would be your hill. That would be your street. You'd be king of the neighborhood, a legend among men. And it sounded easy enough to achieve too. Like, all you'd have to do is stand at the top of your hill, put your board down on the ground, step on it, and go down. Keep it straight. Keep it straight for maybe, I don't know, it's probably like 25 or 30 seconds, and just don't fall off. Cool. That sounds good. So at the top of this hill, we exchanged a few snide remarks to each other about being too afraid to go down. What, you scared? Do you want your mum to hold your hand while you go down? Literally, these were words that I can remember hearing. But in truth, you could still feel this unspoken tension because nobody actually wanted to step up. But in my infinite wisdom, as an 11-year-old, I volunteered myself to tackle this hill. Again, no one else is going to. No one said, yeah, I'll do it. And no one's ever done it before. How cool would I be if I could ride this hill? Sick. That'd be awesome. It'd be my hill, my street. I could see the signpost. It said Jamie Lane. In big, bold letters. It'd be my road. I want to pause here for a second, okay? And take a small moment to fully appreciate some of the unwise decisions that I had made leading up to this moment. First of all, I wasn't wearing a helmet. I wasn't wearing any kind of protective gear, because, what kind of self-respecting preteen would? Right? How lame is it to wear a helmet? My head is obviously harder than concrete. My skin is tougher than rocks. Like, I don't need to wear any protective gear. Unwise decision number one, okay? Unwise decision number two. I had taken it upon myself to make some modifications to my skateboard as a DIY handyman 11-year-old. Now, the board itself wasn't really fit for anything as it was. Like, the bearings and the wheels weren't turning evenly, so it couldn't keep straight. The trucks on the underside of the board were made of a really cheap plastic. Those little rubber bits that are inside the trucks for turning were rock solid. So you could go hard left, you could go hard right, and that was about it. Like, the board was good for nothing. But on top of that, I decided that I would spray paint the grip tape because that would look so cool. Spray painted in silver. And I put a big green lightning bolt on it because I'm a cool 11-year-old. But of course, by doing that, the grip tape became useless. It's more like slip tape. It's completely smooth. And the third unwise decision that I had made was that I talked myself into believing that this was a good idea in the first place. So with my skateboard in one arm, these unwise decisions in the other, stepped up to the top of the hill, hopped on the board to take it on. And the first few seconds were awesome. Like, I started picking up speed, the board was keeping steady, this adrenaline rush was kicking in. I was like, yeah, man, I'm actually going to make this. This is going to be my hill. My friends are going to think I'm so cool. I'm going to make this. But the following few seconds is where it started getting a little bit sketchy. Those little rubber bits I talked about that were rock hard, they started to toss the board from side to side. Remember, you can go hard left and you can go hard right, but not in between. I'm picking up speed, and it's like throwing me side to side. Okay, that's cool. Like, I've had speed wobbles before. What I'll do is I'll bend my knees and I'll ride it out. That's what I'll do. And then I can just keep going in a straight line and I'll just wrestle this thing. I was wrestling this thing and wrestling this thing. And about 2/3 of the way down, I decided that, look, there was no way I could keep this straight. I had picked up so much speed that I could not keep in a straight line anymore. And there was this car on the side of the road, right? This parked car. I could see that it was heading straight for me, or I was heading straight for it, because it was parked, but I was not. Like, I was beelining for this thing, right? I was going to hit this thing. And so these alarm bells started going off in my head. I thought, man, I've got to jump off this board. Like, I have to jump off this board. It's the only rational thing to do. It goes without saying that smashing into the back of a parked car at that speed with no protective gear would be a pretty unwise decision. Like, it would be pretty expensive. Have to tell my mum about it? Oh, that'd be pretty embarrassing, wouldn't it? She'd have to foot the bill for it because I'm 11 and I don't have a job. Oh, man. You see, my unwise decisions had put me in this position where the only thing left to do was to jump off the board and face whatever consequences came next. There was no alternative. The final seconds of my attempt for world fame happened in slow motion. As I braced for the jump, my foot slipped on the grip tape. The slip tape. So slippery. My foot slipped. When I landed, I was moving so fast that my legs just couldn't match the speed my body was moving. And I was a pretty fast dude, right? I did well in cross country in school, but I was moving so quickly that like the top half of my body was propelling down this hill, the bottom half of my body was dragging backwards because I couldn't keep up with it, and so I was leaning forwards, and I completely ate it. Like my face smashed into the concrete. I landed head first, no helmet, remember, face first into the concrete. Because I was moving so fast, my arms were behind me. So literally, like my head stopped the fall. So I fell down onto the ground. And I slid down this hill on my face. Yeah. You know how a scorpion has a tail that kind of arcs over above its head? Yeah, that's what my legs were doing when I was going down. And honestly, I promise you, I can remember the tips of my toes touching the back of my head as I'm sliding down this hill on my face. Needless to say, I collected quite a few injuries from this incident. My chin was completely purple. I had all these grazes on my arms. I actually had a lump on my chin for a good couple of years afterwards. I don't really know what it was or why it was there, but it was there for a couple of years. I chipped my tooth, which is still chipped to this day. Oops. Now, in the grand scheme of things, while it might sound a little bit dramatic, it's not really an earth-shattering, unwise decision or oops or regret that I've made in my life, right? But it does share a lot of parallels with regrets that are much more serious or that do have larger consequences. I mean, think about one of your own regrets for a second. Something that's happened in your life that you wish you could just go and take back. Was it something you did? Was it something you said? Was it something you didn't do, maybe? Bring it really clear in your mind, front and center. And don't worry about the person next to you. They don't know what you're thinking. You can bring it into really crisp, clear view. And just put it there for a second. Just think about it. It's pretty uncomfortable. And I'm not doing this to try and make you feel bad, because we all have regrets, right? We've all got stuff that we wish we could go and take back. But what I want to really point out today is that there is a pattern when it comes to regrets. And that's really exciting, because if we know the pattern of events that leads up to a regret, then we can eventually stop the chain of events in its tracks before that point of disaster, before we're left with no alternatives. It gives us this ability to limit how many regrets we have so that we can live a life that is not overcome with guilt. And to paraphrase American pastor Andy Stanley, the point of regret is preceded by a series of unwise decisions. Okay? The point of regret that you've got in your head right now, was preceded by a series of unwise decisions. In other words, you had a series of unwise decisions, unwise choices that led to this regret that's in your life. Okay, that's the pattern. If you think about your regret, what would you change? Was there something that you would do differently? If it's a regret you have, then there probably is. If you regret something, then it's because you did something, or you didn't do something, or you said something. What would you go back and do differently? Was there a decision you could have made more wisely to change the outcome? And this pattern's a little bit like dominoes. And I brought some dominoes today because I'm super cool. Let me just bring this here. And if you take a pack of dominoes, okay, just regular dominoes, and if you stand them end on end, like this, in a line, how many should we take? Should we take 6? That's 3, 4, 5, and 6. And if you leave them there, just standing there, in a series, in a line, what do? Did I hear nothing? Yeah, nothing. They just kind of stand there, right? They just kind of exist. But what's going to happen when I push over the first one? Depends which first one I push. That is a very technical answer. I love it. Which first one should I push? Maybe not that one. If I push over this end domino, it's going to knock into the second. It's going to knock into the third. It's going to knock into the fourth, fifth, and sixth, until they've all come crashing down into a pile. And it's not rocket science, right? That's a pretty logical proceeding of events. But the crazy thing is, the only active input I had was pushing over that first domino. If I didn't push over that first domino, or wiggle the stage, apparently, they'd all still be standing. And it's pretty similar with unwise decisions. They can also have a domino effect where one unwise decision leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the next, until ultimately you end up with a regret. When you've got this collapsing line of dominoes that goes unchecked for too long, or a series of unwise decisions, they'll all come crashing down eventually. So let's take a simple example. You get a text from a friend inviting you to go to that party. You know, that party. The crazy one. And from past experiences, you know at this party that things get a little bit out of hand. And you know in those situations, maybe you struggle with an addiction to alcohol, right? And you know that if you put yourself in that situation, it could lead to unwise decisions. But you make the decision to go anyway. I mean, it's just a party, right? Unwise decision number one in the chain. One decision, but the night of decision-making has only just begun, because as soon as you walk in that door, the host of the party comes and offers you a drink. He says, hey, let's have a good night. And you think, should I? You know what? It's just one drink. I'll do it. I know I struggle with it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Unwise decision number two. Before you know it, one drink has led to two. It's led to three. It's led to four. Just one more. Just one more. Just one more. And before you know it, you've got this whole series of unwise decisions. You've got this whole line of dominoes lined up in front of you. So the night's coming to a close, the party's finishing up, and you know you've got to get home early so that you can get up for work tomorrow, because you've got work in the morning, but you went to this party anyway. So you think, right, okay, cool, I need to get home. How did I get here? I drove. How will I get back? Oh, cool, I'll drive. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Wait, how many drinks have I had? Oh, you know what? Like, I'm sure it'll be fine. I feel fine. I feel okay. I'll tell you what. I'll hop in the car and I'll drive home. It'll be fine. It'll be okay. The last unwise decision in the chain. See, it's so unwise, it doesn't even want to stand up by itself. Yeah, I don't really want to move. Now, what we have here is this long line of dominoes, which is made up of unwise decisions. And the crazy thing is, each of these decisions, each of these dominoes by itself seems pretty insignificant. Like this one here at the start was just saying yes to a party. This one here was just saying yes to the first drink. This one here was saying yes to the second. This one over here was just saying yes to one more. Just one more, it'll be fine. This one here, right at the end, was hopping in the car, while intoxicated, to drive home. Fairly insignificant by themselves, so it would seem, but when we combine them, we know that it's only a matter of time before it leads to regret, something that we can't take back, something that can never be undone. I mean, I don't think I need to finish the story for you with what happens when you get behind the wheel of a car drunk, right? All comes crashing down eventually. The series of unwise decisions is now complete, and you're left with this regret that you can never take back, and it's something that can never be undone. And this is just one example, right? You'll find that this concept, this analogy, can be applied to pretty much every single regret that you have, every single series of unwise decisions that you've made in your life. Was it leading up to that moment where you did indulge in that addictive behavior? Was it leading up to that moment where you ended up hurting somebody that you love? There was a series of unwise decisions that led to your regret, a chain of events, a line of dominoes knocking into each other, caused it all to come crashing down. Pretty gloomy, right? But there is good news. And actually, to be honest, it is really good news. And this brings us to our big life-changing question. And look, if you are zoning out right now, if you're thinking about what you're going to be having for lunch later or what you're doing for the rest of the weekend, please, can I grab you for just 10 seconds, because this is the life-changing question. This is the game changer right here. This is the key to helping you live a life of fewer regrets. And here it is. What is the wise thing to do? Pretty easy, right? If you can get this, if you can ask yourself this question when you're making a decision, then you're already halfway there to having fewer regrets. What is the wise thing to do? Notice how the question is not, what is the most that I can get away with without suffering the consequences? The question is also not, what is the bare minimum that I can do and still be fine? The question is also not, how many times can I repeat the same mistakes until I achieve a different outcome? What is the wise thing to do? What is the wise thing to do? You'll also notice that the question is not, is there anything wrong with this? I mean, why not? Wouldn't that be a perfectly decent measure of whether or not something is a good decision? If something's not wrong, then it must be right, right? Wouldn't that question help us to make better decisions? Is there anything wrong with this? Not really. I mean, just because something is not wrong doesn't mean that it will be a good decision. It's totally possible to make a decision that's not wrong, but still leads to a regret you can't take back. I mean, it wasn't wrong for me to ride down that hill on my skateboard. It's perfectly legal. It wasn't hurting anybody until I hurt myself. I wasn't putting anybody else in danger. But given my context with a less than average skateboard and no protective gear and the fragile ego of an 11-year-old, probably wasn't the wisest decision to make. It wouldn't be wrong to eat fast food for every meal. It's your money. If you want to go out to McDonald's every single day and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner there every single day, it wouldn't be wrong. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. You're not hurting anybody else. It wouldn't be a wrong thing to do. But if you think about the long-term impact that's going to have on your health, I think we can all agree that it wouldn't be a wise thing to do. So that's why we have this question. What is the wise thing to do? It seems to be human nature to try and snuggle right up to the edge of our boundaries and see how much we can get away with, even when we know that what we're skating on thin ice, because, it's not technically wrong until it eventually does go wrong. I mean, I can buy this expensive thing right now because it's my money till it's gone. I can eat whatever I want without thinking about my health because I'm perfectly healthy for now. I can indulge in this addictive behavior because it hasn't hurt anybody yet. And this is why I have the question, what is the wise thing to do? And this huge question hasn't just come out of thin air. This advice is actually deeply rooted in the Bible. So if we turn to the Bible, we find that Paul, one of Jesus' followers, he writes to Christians living in a place called Ephesus and provides them with some advice. And we can find this advice in the book of Ephesians in chapter 5, verses 15 to 17. And this is absolutely game-changing, right? This is what it says. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise. Okay? Don't live your life carelessly. Don't make rash or reckless decisions, not as unwise, but as wise. Let wisdom be the thing that guides you to make better decisions. Let wisdom be the thing that guides your judgment. If we're not careful, then we could quickly find we're on our way to making a series of unwise decisions. And it goes on. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Wow. That's a big word. Evil. Goodness me. The days are evil. Let's look at the first half first. Making the most of every opportunity. Don't waste your time making unwise decisions. That's time that you can't get back when you eventually do have that regret. Instead, make the most of every opportunity by actually making wise decisions that will set you up for a future win. These are opportunities for you to truly make the most of. Because the days are evil. I mean, in our culture, there is temptation everywhere, like around every single corner. It's very easy to find yourself making an unwise decision that could quite quickly start you on this path that leads down a very slippery slope of making one unwise decision after the other. Unwise decision, one more. Temptation everywhere. An invitation that encourages us to indulge in this appetite that can never truly be satisfied. I mean, maybe for you it is that one drink. Maybe it's drugs. Maybe it's an unhealthy eating habit. It could be smoking. Might not even be a substance that's entering your body. It could be could be cheating on your partner or your spouse. It could be abuse. It could be neglecting your finances. It could be gambling. The point is, there are all kinds of things out there that can cause us to slip up. So we need to make sure that we're being very careful how we live, not as unwise and fall into those traps, but as wise. And he finishes up in verse 17. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Therefore, as a result, because of this, because we live in a culture where there is temptation around every corner, therefore, do not be foolish. Don't pretend like we live in a world where there isn't any temptation, because that would be foolish. There is temptation. We know this. We've seen this. We've experienced this ourselves. But instead, understand what the Lord's will is. Step up to what we know in our hearts to be true. And this is where Paul's basically saying, hey guys, come on. Don't be reckless. Don't be foolish. Don't live your life unwisely. You know there are things in this world that will cause you to slip up. You know there are unwise decisions that could lead to a regret that you can never take back. Rather, live wisely. What has God set out for your life? What wise decisions can you make? What is the wise thing to do? So let's rewind for a second here. Let's come back to our scenario. Let's break the chain. With a couple of really simple, wise decisions, we can actually completely stop this regret from ever happening. Okay? So what do? We said yes to this party here, even though we know that we get tempted with alcohol. We said yes to a drink here. Said yes to a drink here. Do you guys know what comes next? Yeah, we said yes to a drink here. Perfect. What else did we do? We said yes to a drink here. One more. Oh, just one more. That'll be fine. And what did we do last? We drove home. Perfect. Called an Uber. See, hey, getting ahead of the game. Love it. That is a wise decision. We drove home. Here's our series of unwise decisions, right? So let's break this down and figure out how we could start chipping away at this series of unwise decisions. So we're drinking at this party all night. We know that it wouldn't be wise to hop behind the wheel of a car. So what could we do? We could call an Uber. Good answer. Or what if we crashed on the couch instead, right? Point being, we've just removed this unwise decision. Could have saved somebody's life by doing that, just by making one decision, right? Now, interestingly, we still have a series of unwise decisions here, okay? And it could still lead to a regret, so I think we can do even better. What we could do instead is maybe we go to the party and we do drive home, but what if we have nothing to drink? Man, that is a really unwise decision, eh? That one driving home drunk. Okay, so what if we don't drink anything at all? Now let's take a look at our series of unwise decisions. How much better is that? Look at this massive gap here. What's going to happen when I knock over the first domino? Not a lot, right? This is so much better. But I think we can do even better still, because we know that if we go to that party, we know we struggle with an addiction to alcohol, so perhaps the best thing to do would be to just not go to that party at all. What does our series of unwise decisions look like then? There is no series. We've made a whole series of wise decisions instead. And this has put us up in a situation where we're set up for success, because this will not lead to regret. Just like that, you've made a series of wise decisions, and you've completely avoided putting yourself in that situation where one unwise decision could quite easily, even if you don't mean it to, could quite easily lead into the next. And again, this is just one scenario, one example. But if you think back again to the start of this message, and you think back to that regret that came into your head earlier, to that line of dominoes, to that series of unwise decisions that led up to that regret, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? What decisions would you make differently? What dominoes would you remove? And where can you see the dominoes starting to stack up in your own life right now? Are you making a series of unwise decisions? You might not even be realizing it. What is the wise thing to do? It's a really powerful question, and we do extremely well to make this the center of our decision-making process. But how on earth do we know what the wise thing to do is? Right? We know the question, but how do we answer it? And this is where it gets really exciting, and it really ramps up, and the question becomes absolutely game-changing. We can add this extra dimension to the question, and it will give us this ability to discern for ourselves what the wise thing to do is, so that we can live a life that's free from regret. And it goes like this. Andy Stanley puts it beautifully. In light of my past experience my current circumstances, and my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? Boom. Just like that, we've got 3 really clear reference points that we can use to start thinking for ourselves, hey, what is the wise thing to do? I'm up to this situation right now. What is the wise thing to do? What's the wise decision to make? So let's take a quick look at these different aspects. In my past experience, in light of your past, what is the wise thing to do? What situations have you encountered in the past that could help you to make a wise decision today? Have you been in this position before? What happened the last time you were in this exact same situation? I know for me, if I was going to ride down that hill again on my skateboard, I would definitely be wearing a helmet. I'd definitely be wearing knee pads, and I'd be wearing elbow pads, and to be honest, I'd probably not even do it on that skateboard. I would get a completely different board, one that could stay in a straight line, one that was designed for going fast. The point is, if you've been in this situation before, you've already got a pretty clear idea of what the outcome could be. What happened the last time you put yourself in a position where it was easy to slip back into that addictive habit? Or the last time you placed a bad bet? Or the last time you neglected one of your relationships with somebody that you care about? See, we can actually learn from what has happened in the past to help us make wise decisions today. But we can also use our current circumstances. Where are you right now? What situation are you in right now? You might be about to make a big decision, but what's your current emotional state? What are the immediate knock-on effects of making this decision? Because life's tough sometimes. Like, we can often find ourselves in these positions where we really just want to pack up and leave. Just pack our bags and go. Maybe it's a situation that makes us really mad, or a situation that makes us really sad. Maybe we're frustrated. Maybe we're angry. But we need to be really careful that we don't allow those current circumstances to cause us to make decisions today that will lead to regrets later in the future. Be aware of how you're currently feeling if you're about to react with an impulsive decision. Take a short moment, just a short moment. Just take 5 seconds. Just pause. Think about your current situation. Take stock of what you're currently feeling and ask yourself, what is the wise thing for me to do? And finally, for my future hopes and dreams, in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? What do you want your future to look like 6 months from now? What do you want it to look like a year from now, or even 5 years from now? What are your hopes for the future? What are your dreams? It's not an easy question to just gloss over. This is actually a massive question. So I really encourage, if you haven't done this already, sit down, just take some time and think about, hey, where do I want to be in 5 years' time? Actually, what do I want my life to look like 5 years from now? The reason we want to do this is because those decisions we make today will impact our future. They'll steer our lives in a certain direction, even if we're not actively choosing it. If we're making a series of unwise decisions today, a series of dominos that are stacking into each other, and if we're not truly honest with ourselves about where we want to end up in 5 years' time, we'll be heading down a path that we probably don't want for our lives, one that could be filled with regret. You see, if we take a moment to stop and consider what our future hopes and dreams are, we can make decisions today that actually drive our life in that direction. In light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? We are very fortunate here at Gracegate to have such a supportive community. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. I mean, you can just look around and see just everywhere. There's the supported living programs, which are just the coolest thing in the world, I think. But even in smaller contexts, like people reaching out a hand to somebody who's in need, I think we have such a cool support network here. And that's extra cool for this because we can actually ask people for advice. If we're ever unsure of what we should do ourselves, if we haven't been able to discern the answer in light of my past experience, current circumstances, future hopes and dreams, what's the wise thing for me to do? We can ask somebody who might know, someone in this community. And we can actually see this clearly in the Bible throughout Proverbs. In chapter 12 in Proverbs, verse 15, it says this: "The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice." In other words, it is wise to listen to advice. But it goes a step further, and we see a related message later on in chapter 13, verse 20, which gives us some more clarity around who we should be getting our advice from. And this is what it says: "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they helping you to make wise decisions? What impact are they having on your life? And how does that compare to your future hopes and dreams? If they're not helping you to make wise decisions, then who can you walk alongside to help you make those wise decisions? And of course, we can also turn to God for wisdom. And we find this laid out really clearly for us in the book of James, even just in chapter 1, verse 5. This is what it says. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Ask God. Say a prayer. Ask for his wisdom, and then actually stay attentive to what it is that he's trying to tell you. And the very, very last thing to do, once you've asked yourself the question, what is the wise thing to do? You know what the wise thing to do is. You've got the answer in your head. What is the last thing you should do? Do it. Simple as that. Do it. Do the wise thing. You know what the wise thing is now. You've discerned it for yourself, or you've asked somebody who is wise, or you've prayed about it. You know what the wise thing to do is. You know what you should do. So what's the last step? Do the wise thing. I mean, what's the point in even asking that question if we know that we're not going to follow through with the answer? Okay, I know I have a drinking problem, but I'm going to have another anyway. I'm pretty tight on cash at the moment, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough to pay my bills if I buy this expensive thing, because I really, really want it, and it's so cool. So I'm just going to buy it anyway. It'll be fine. YOLO. Thank you. You know, I really should apologize to that person because I value that relationship. But you know what? They also hurt me, so I'm just going to wait for them to apologize first. If we let our unwise decisions go unchecked or unactioned, then we're going to end up in a situation where we have no control over the outcome because we're all out of alternatives, right? We're just left with this regret that we wish we could go back and change. So take a moment to think about what the wise thing to do. Ask yourself the question and then actually do it. Do the wise thing. I know I have a drinking problem, and in my past experience, one more has led to some pretty big regrets. So instead, I'm just going to say, cool, no thanks. I'm pretty tight on cash at the moment, and I don't know if I'll have enough money to pay the bills if I buy that expensive thing. And I really, really, really want this expensive thing. But in my current situation, the wise thing to do would be to pay my bills first, and then take a small portion of what's left and save it so that I eventually can buy that thing. You know, I really should apologize to that person because I value that relationship. And yeah, they did actually hurt me as well. But I want this relationship to last into the future. So I'm going to be the one who apologizes first. What is the wise thing to do? If we can nail this, guys, if we can get this right, if we can implement this into our lives, what does that look like? Honestly, what does it look like? If we can ask ourselves, what is the wise thing to do in light of my past experiences, my current circumstances, my future hopes and dreams, and then if we can actually take the step to implement the answer, we can make far better decisions. We can break that pattern of events that leads up to a regret. We can live our lives in a way that is so much more fulfilling. And it all starts with that one question. What is the wise thing to do? Let's pray. God, we are so thankful, Lord, that you have given us the ability to be wise. We have this amazingly powerful question that we can ask ourselves to make wise decisions, God. In light of my past experiences, my current circumstances, my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do, Lord? And I pray, I really do, God, that you give us the wisdom. Help us to discern what the right thing to do is. What is the wise thing to do? And then actually give us the courage to step out and make that wise decision. It's one thing knowing the information, but until we actually implement it, it's not going to make much impact. So please, Lord, give us the courage, God. Thank you for everything that you've done, everything that you're currently doing, and everything that you will do, Lord. In your name, amen.